This video is to give you some tips and a few tricks on the floating square and square units. You will be making a lot of these this year. Every month you're going to make 15 out of 3 color combinations. So you'll make 5 out of each color combination, and you can put the lights and the darks together however you want, but you will be making a lot of these. So I want to show you a few tips. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut all of the darks into little 2-inch squares. You do want to starch this fabric every single time, and these are pre-cut triangles, and so you want to make sure that the lights especially are starched pretty good. Now I want you to look at the pattern, because you'll see that these are drawn so that as you cut them into a mountain. So I left the last 2 to show you. So the reason why that's important is if you had a directional fabric, you can have all of the 4 squares, or the 4 triangles, sorry, that go around the outside. You could have these all be the same direction. So let me just walk you through it. So these are the 5 squares that we cut, and we're going to cut it into a mountain. So this is exactly how my big piece was before as I cut it. I just left them sort of where they were. I just moved my piles so that they're still facing the same direction. Okay? So let's just take this for a second, and I'm going to take one apart to show you. So this is a set, but this is the same set, and this is the same set. So as you sew your pieces together, if it matters to you, and this one is all going all directions, and so it really won't, this isn't that great of an object lesson. But, whoops, so sorry, totally jiggled that. Let's just pretend for a minute that everything on this is going up and down. Okay, so this is a stripe. So if I take that stripe and I put it on one side, and remember how it's going up and down, I've got one corner, and those stripes would be going up and down on every corner. Does that even make any sense? And the only time this is important is if you have a real directional fabric. This one is super, it goes all directions, but you can imagine if this was like a strong stripe, you would want a top right corner, a bottom left corner, a top left corner, and a bottom right corner, and all the lines would be going the same direction. So that's just a little tip to help you, because like I said, you're going to be sewing a lot of these. So you're going to pre-cut the triangles, and then you're going to sew them together. So I've got some sewn here. Let me move some of these so that you can, and now that they're cut and they were cut directionally, I can figure it out if it's important for me when I sew them together. Okay, so you're going to get a square, and you're going to take 2 triangles, and you're going to put them right sides together. Now when I do this, you can eyeball where this is about the same amount showing there, and it's about the same amount showing here. So you're just going to eyeball it as best you can. Now when I take this to my sewing machine, this is important. You're going to put the bias edge down next to your feed dogs. That gives you a straight edge to go here, and then you want to keep this nice and straight across the colored seam, the dark fabric, and then you're going to sew off. Then you have to fold this back in order to sew on that second side. And you get it all eyeballed as straight as you can, and you're going to sew with the bias. The triangle goes on the bottom, because these long bias edges on the triangles are super stretchy. So if you have saggy on the bottom, then you'll always remember to which direction the feed dogs need to go. So this is the proper way. Then you're going to set those seams and press them. So these are the first two I sewed on, and there you can see they're oversized. And then you're going to set these seams, but before we set them, I just take my rotary cutter and I eyeball right next to my previous seam or edge along that triangle. I'm going to grab an iron. All right. So when you're going to press and then trim, you're going to get all those little triangles out of the way, and you're going to set it, and remember to always go with the seam. Don't ever wiggle or go this way across the seam. And then you're going to fold that over. You'll press it again and get that nice and square. So setting is an important part of the pressing process because then it makes your seam respond better. I've heard that it kind of relaxes the thread into the fabric, and you'll end up with a much straighter seam if you do that. Don't know if it works, but I do like the way my stuff turns out, so I believe it. Okay, so there's one floating square. So here's another one to show you. Set the seam, and then you open it up. This time my seams are going towards the light fabric, and so my light fabric is on top when I first set that seam. Okay, now we're going to trim up. So let me move my iron. Okay, so this is kind of fun, and it can be a little bit scary if you want to worry about it, but you shouldn't. Okay, so there's two ways that we can trim this up. This is probably one of my favorite ways, and I hope, let me get this out of the glare. Hopefully that works. And I'm going to sit it on a piece of white. There. Hopefully that looks good. Okay, so this is a 3.5 inch square, which is what these are going to trim up to. We don't have a whole lot to trim off, but it will work. So, since this is a 3.5 inch perfect square, there's a white line that goes right through the middle, and you can see it when it gets onto a color. So if I have those crossbars, so here's a white line and here's a white line. Do you see how those are going right through the center of my block? So then if I was to trim, I'm going to start up here, I'm going to back it up, go forward. I had a super expensive ruler a few weeks ago that I was using, and I totally trimmed off the corner, and I was so mad. It ruined my blade on my rotary cutter as well as my ruler. So remember to back up and then go forward. And that's how you make those floating squares, because when we get our seam off, we're going to still have these points will not go to the corners. Okay, I'm going to show you one other way to trim up, and you can choose what you like. I know a lot of you have this ruler. This is the squared ruler by Studio 180. Okay, so you're going to use this part over here, and you're going to go to the 3.5, and there's a center point. Let me see. I don't think you'll like this method, but you can do it, and this is upside down. So you can kind of guess by this little point, that one, and this is a little bit bigger. But you line those up and go across here. And then you would line that up again. And this time your 3.5 is going to be right there. And you're just going to make sure that it looks nice and centered. This would not be my first choice for trimming, but if this is the only ruler that you have, you can make it work. You can also do, where's that ruler? Actually don't even have one, but this has that angle on it. So see right here where it's a 45 degree, that doesn't work too good because you still have to go, yeah, I would not use this ruler. Because it shows the 1/4 inch and you'd get too mixed up. So your best bet is to do this ruler right here. And that white line and the white line go right through the two tips as you square them up. So you should end up with 15 little floating square and squares.